Hello, everybody. This is Marshall Poe. I'm the founder and editor of the New Books Network. And if you're listening to this, you know that the NBN is the largest academic podcast network in the world. We reach a worldwide audience of 2 million people. You may have a podcast, or you may be thinking about starting a podcast. As you probably know, there are challenges, basically of two kinds. One is technical. There are things you have to know in order to get your podcast produced and distributed. And the second is, and this is the biggest problem, you need to get an audience. Building an audience in podcasting is the hardest thing to do today. With this in mind, we at the NBM have started a service called NBM Productions. What we do is help you create a podcast, produce your podcast, distribute your podcast, and we host your podcast. Most importantly, what we do is we distribute your podcast to the NBN audience. We've done this many times with many academic podcasts, and we would like to help you. If you would be interested in talking to us about how we can help you with your podcast, please contact us. Just go to the front page of the New Books Network, and you will see a link to NBN Productions. Click that, fill out the form, and we can talk. Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Mackay, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Ruman Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. Margo Millet has a list of mounting problems that threaten to bury her. She has a new baby born from an affair with her English professor who wants nothing to do with her and the child. She has lost her consistent job for reasons mostly out of her control. Her mother is hell-bent on snagging a husband, no matter how dull. And her father, a once famous pro wrestler, has appeared out of nowhere and is looking for a place to crash. Such are the circumstances that introduce us to one of the most endearing and clever characters in contemporary fiction, the eponymous Margo of Rufi Thorpe's Margo's Got Money Troubles. Desperate to find a way to provide for herself and her son Bodhi, Margo enters hesitantly into the world of OnlyFans, an online space of the gig work economy that can provide a safe environment for sex workers or those on the periphery of that kind of labor. When interest in her site blows up, Margo finds herself teaming up with other producers to attempt something new, something more like art and narrative that can sustain them economically and perhaps even intellectually. But while economic success newly blooms, the repercussions for touching the third rail of American Puritanism threaten to jeopardize everything that Margo has worked for. Told in an unconventional and hilarious first-person voice, Rufi Thorpe's latest is a cultural mashup that feels uniquely true to our American moment. Rufi Thorpe received her MFA from the University of Virginia in 2009. She is the author of 4 novels, The Girls from Corona del Mar, Dear Fang with Love, and The Knockout Queen, which was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner Award. She lives in California with her husband and 2 sons. Welcome to Burned by Books, Rufi.
Thank you so much. That was such a gorgeous introduction to the book.
Well, thank you for being here. I have been really looking forward to talking to you for a while. I first encountered Margo's Got Money Troubles in its audiobook form, which I have to say is the best audiobook of the year, if not the last 5 years. And then luckily, when I knew we were going to talk, I got to read it in its material version, which was equally a pleasure. And so I'm especially glad to get to talk to you. Margo is such an incredibly charming character. She is both vulnerable and young, and also powerfully decisive and protective of those she loves. It's very hard not to fall for her immediately. Tell us a little bit about how Margo came into focus for you as a character and as a voice in this novel.
It's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of times I start writing from a really abstract place. And so I had literally started with the idea that I wanted to write a Madonna whore character, like a character who was both a very good sex worker and a very good mother. And I had been thinking that I wanted to do something like that for like 5 or 6 years before I I tried doing it. And it was really just once OnlyFans exploded, I just noticed that people were talking about it in a slightly different way, where they were just less quick to collapse everything into black and white. There was just more openness to it. And I thought, if I was ever going to write that character, this would be how I would get the reader to like buy in. But so starting from that abstract place, I basically just have to wander around in the fictional world for a long time before I find anything real or good. And so it was as I was writing, I mean, first thought, oh, I want to write about her after she's already started this business with JB. And then I was like, no, this is like an origin story. This is about how she levels up and becomes this powerful badass. And then I was thinking about, well, what are the actual mechanics of female empowerment? Like, how do you get to that point where you are empowered in yourself, you know? So all of this is really abstract, but it was paralleled by me sort of wandering around. I do like basically a lot of writing that's just me trying to figure out who the characters are, what the backstories are, what they sound like, how they talk, all those things. And so for Margo, while I'm having all these abstract thoughts, I'm also just sort of like wandering around the world with her. And it was one key moment of finding her was like, there's this moment with Mark where he asks her to bring him water when he's in bed, and he like says it in a little grandmother voice. And she sort of is like, weird, you know, like there's this way in which I understood that she was actually more of a grown up than he was, and that she was going to be the one to have to go get the water, you know, that she was going to be the one who was going to man up, and that the grace and naivety with which she did that, with which she ponies up, is sort of like the center of the character. She has just her superpower is kind of her naivety, and she's just willing to get punched in the face again and again because she like just sincerely wants to take care of the people that she loves. She has that kind of like the power of the fool energy to her. And I think I fell in love with that about her, and it made her so fun to write, so fun to follow her around.
That's now that you say that, I understand exactly what's so appealing about her. And it is this combination of naivete and just willingness to do just about anything. I mean, especially for Bodhi, but obviously for her dad and those around her. And yeah, she's just remarkable, and she's resilient. She's so resilient. Anybody else would have just fallen on their face, and that would have been the end of it.
Are you kidding? At 19 and 20, and even just like how how sane she is for that age is such profound wish fulfillment. You know, like, that's not how I would expect any 19-year-old on the planet to react to this.
No, and yet she's totally believable.
Yeah.
And I do think like there is amongst 19 and 20-year-olds a combination of extraordinary maturity where you see visions of like real adultness, and then that is combined with like incredible immaturity, which we still see from Margaret.
Yeah. Well, and also just that realization that like your naivety is actually a superpower, because it does make you brave, and it does make you write about certain things. You know,
that's so true. So Margot's affair with Mark, her English professor, could be the stuff of cliche in other hands. These kinds of illicit affairs are such a prominent event in the culture that it can be tricky to make them operate outside of certain tropes. But you manage to give the affair and its afterlife new meaningfulness, I found. In part because Margot's utter refusal herself to become a cliche, but also in your willingness to eventually see both parties as quite complicated and flawed. So how did you get at the nitty-gritty of making Margot's affair something novel?
It's so interesting. So, okay, I am one of those people. I did have an affair with one of my English professors. I luckily did not get pregnant. But I think that I decided to have the affair because it seemed like such a trope. Like I was like, oh, this is a thing that can happen to you in college. Like I want this experience. It was like a ride at Disneyland or something to me. And I was like, can't go through a liberal arts education without one of these, the old affair with the professor. Like, let's see what this trope is about. And then it was like so disappointing. So Like he was just like a clearly very lost and broken man, And like I was like really only like performatively doing like it was so sad and ridiculous. And like the weirdest part was that like I think on a human level, we actually got along pretty well. And like we didn't dislike each other, but also it was such a stupid relationship for both of us to be having. And so I kind of liked, I mean, as the Me Too movement was happening, I at once felt like, oh, culturally, it is so good that we are having all these conversations because there's nothing that made me more aware. I think as I got older and further away from the affair with my college professor, I started to be like, well, now what was a grown man doing with a 20-year-old girl? Like that's gross. Like 20-year-olds to me now, I'm like, they're babies, and he was older then than I am now. It's like, how was he not even repelled by my youth? Like there was something wrong. So I did, the older I've gotten, the more judgmental I do get. And the more I understand the abusive power dynamics that were at play, that I just don't think that professors should be sleeping with their students, no matter what their gender roles are.
Mhm.
But also just this feeling that Me Too was also not the whole picture, that it wasn't as simple as like the professor was the bad guy. Like it wasn't it was a more new I guess what I'm saying is I feel like Me Too actually paved the way for us to begin to have even more nuanced conversations about ethical culpability and power dynamics in situations like that. So I was really just excited to get to portray an affair in as lifelike a manner as I could.
Hmm. I really like the way that you put that as engendering a certain kind of new conversation, a new and important conversation. Because I do agree that's where we are now after that initial conflagration.
Yeah.
Margo does indeed have money problems. She receives an NDA settlement, if that's what we'd call it, from her professor's family to keep their affair and child under wraps. But life with a new baby is burning through that money quickly. And so she turns to OnlyFans as a possible means of floating her economically. You've talked a little bit about kind of OnlyFans presence in the culture, but I'd love if you would read a section where Margo is starting just sort of like to dip a toe into OnlyFans.
You were supposed to write a little description about the kind of content subscribers could expect on your page in your bio. Margo was struggling to write it and wound up searching for more accounts to see how other girls were doing it. Again, she had to go through Instagram or Twitter. Why did OnlyFans make it so difficult to find new accounts to follow? It was madness. Twitter was how she had found Wang Mangler 99, who was fierce and dark-haired and as small as a child but with giant boobs. Her profile picture showed her next to a refrigerator for scale, and a lot of her posts centered on her tininess, holding her bare foot up next to a Coke can, sitting in an ordinary dining room chair, feet dangling without touching the ground, or else making weird hentai orgasm faces, eyes crossed. Her OnlyFans bio read as follows: feed is NSFW, expect to see tits and ass. If you want to see more, you pay more. I also rate dicks. If you want to get your wang mangled, send me a dick pic and a $20 tip and I'll send you a critique. This is not an account where I will pretend to love you. The only man I will ever love is Goku. Margo was astounded people would pay $20 to have their dick insulted. Though if you were worried it was small or ugly, maybe it was better to know for sure. But she still didn't like the idea, which is why in her bio she wrote, "Lonely hot girl in financial freefall. Please help me make rent this month. I'm new at this and I show boobs and butt but haven't worked up the courage to show more. Maybe you can encourage me? I also rate dicks. If you want to find out what Pokemon your dick most resembles and what attacks it might have, send me a $20 tip and I'll provide a full write-up." For 2 days, nothing happened, and Margo felt stupid for starting the account because, of course, nothing had happened. How would anyone find her? OnlyFans made it impossible. She was also distracted because something was clearly happening to Jinx. His cleaning mania had ended, and now he spent almost all day locked in his room. "Are you okay?" she asked him one evening when he finally emerged. He had even procured an electric kettle, allowing him to make tea in there. Maybe that's what had been making him come out all along, his intense need to boil water. Yeah, I think it's brain chemistry stuff. I probably should work out. That always helps. I just don't want to get injured, so I don't know. He'd stopped shaving his head and had wiry tufts above his ears. "Are you going to look for a job?" she asked. Margo had no idea about his financial situation. She assumed he had plenty of money, but thought he could use a project. "I'd probably have to travel, and I don't know that I'm stable enough for that yet." "What about volunteering?" He looked at her as if he had no idea what she was saying. "At what?" "I don't know, like at the library or—" "Huh," was all he said before scurrying away to the bathroom. That was the other thing, the amount of time Jinx spent in the bathroom. She could not fathom what he was doing in there. He seemed to poop 3 times a day, and each session was an hour-long ordeal. Was he constipated? Was it diarrhea? Was it a prostate thing? Should she make him go to the doctor? He kept talking about a therapist and seemed to talk to him by phone, though she doubted the therapist had the real lowdown on these concerning toilet behaviors. Taking care of Bodhi, monitoring her father's closed door, endlessly refreshing her OnlyFans page to see that nothing new had happened, then making her soul scan through job postings on Craigslist was like trying to make origami out of wet paper. The harder she tried, the more it all kept disintegrating in her hands. It was unclear how so many things simply not happening could be so stressful. She created Hungry Ghost Instagram and Twitter accounts that led to her OnlyFans through link trees that she had seen other people do, and tried to follow other girls on those accounts, but still nothing happened. Sometimes she opened Arabella's account just so she could gaze upon her hostile, smirking face for strength. And then she got her first fan. U1134967. Right away, he sent her a $20 tip and a dick pic to be rated. Margo opened it on her phone and studied the penis for a long time as she was nursing Bodhi. She wanted to get it exactly right. After she set Bodhi down in his rock and play, she pulled out her laptop and wrote the following. "Congratulations, your penis is a tentacruel. With bulging pink glands and glittering dark blue veins, your penis is filled with quiet menace. When that mushroom tip glows red, you know he's about to attack. As both a water and poison type, your penis is passionate but prone to jealousy, easily seeing slights where no harm was intended. He needs lots of coddling and gentle licks. His primary weaknesses are psychic and electric types, so stay away from red-headed witches with stars in their eyes. Your tentacruel species' special moves are ooze attack, extremely potent pre-cum, watch out for accidental pregnancies, clear body, in which your penis completely disappears, which can happen when it's cold out or if you hear your mother's voice. And poison prison, in which you ask a girl for so many reassurances that she loves you that she stops loving you. Completely understandable and luckily avoidable. Tentacruel is your penis's fully evolved form and has an HP of 120. I rate it a 10 out of 10, tantalizing tentacruel." She pressed send, as nervous as the first time she text messaged a boy in middle school. She was still staring at her computer screen when the notification dinged. Another $20 and a message, "That was awesome, way better than I was expecting. Not sure how you knew about Poison Prison, but you were sadly right on there, hehehe. You've got a fan. More people should know about this account." Encouraged by this, Margo diligently posted several times a day for her single fan, U1134967. Since it was only him, her posts grew sillier and less self-conscious. One day she wrote boobs in eyeliner on her boobs and just posted that. He commented with a laughing emoji and sent a $10 tip suggesting she make a video of her boobs bouncing. That was an entire genre she hadn't even thought of. She made a video clip of her boobs bouncing as she pulled off a shirt, one where she jiggled them with her hands. She even made a clip of herself jump roping naked, during which she definitely damaged the popcorn ceiling of her bedroom. Then one day, incidentally, the same day Jinx left the house for 3 hours and came back with a small ficus tree, which he asked her to lug up the stairs so it could live in his room. Still no bed, still no bookcases, just a sleeping bag and a tree and maybe 200 books. Margo got 2 fans at once. U277493 and Rocket Raccoon 69. Most guys left their handles completely anonymized, and Margo was grateful when they didn't because it made it much easier to keep them straight. Neither of her new fans asked for their dicks to be rated, which was a little disappointing, but she kept posting and the fans kept trickling in. At the end of 3 weeks, she had 20 fans paying $12.99 a month. And after OnlyFans took its 20%, it was less than she could have made in one night at her old restaurant, and she certainly was no Arabella. But she had time to figure it out, another month or 2 at least. Mark's mommy had made sure of it.
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl, I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Xyzal. You see, Xyzal works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise, all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar. Zero patience for slow walkers. Those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night. Have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so fun. I've never gotten to read that section out loud before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. And you could definitely do the audio. I mean, clearly, like you want Elk Fanning to do your audiobook
Yeah,
ever
I mean,
possible.
If she wants to, I'm not going to stop her.
But you're a great reader, and it was nice to
Thank
hear you read it. OnlyFans has grown exponentially in the last half decade, and it straddles this line between erotica and pornography and sex work. And Margo approaches it warily. What was intriguing to you about OnlyFans, and was its liminal space in the culture present but not so much talked about in quote unquote polite society, something that mirrored Margo's position in the culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I think that OnlyFans was really interesting to me partially this was literally the book I wrote during the pandemic. And in the pandemic is when OnlyFans was exploding. I think they went from 20 million users to 120 million users during the first 9 months of the pandemic. So
Oh my goodness.
it was a perfect confluence of every waitress in America being out of work and every man in America suddenly working from home. And and those two forces met in personalized porn. And there's just something about it
It
where
was inevitable, wasn't it?
it was
It could only be that.
What else do you think a global pandemic would lead to? But I think that it really is sort of an interesting paradigm for a number of reasons. One, I think more women can picture themselves selling nudes online than can imagine getting up the balls to go audition at a strip club, right?
Mhm.
Most women, or even just people, have wound up taking a naked picture or two of themselves with their phone at some point. So the idea of taking nudes of yourself is not, no one's certain that that makes you a bad person. Like pretty much everybody does that. And then everyone sold something online. And so it becomes sort of this question of like, well, what exactly is bad about this? And then combined with just the insane amount of money that you can make if you have a really successful account. And then how much of that money is going to the creator. You have just fewer, you have greater autonomy over the kind of content that you make and greater control, unless you're entering into OnlyFans already in some sort of controlling arrangement. But if you're just on your own, you kind of have complete creative control over the kind of content that you want to make and how you want to price it and how you want to manage your business. And you're not, you have control over who you work with. You have control over how you're presented. And that's not something that you have necessarily with traditional porn unless you're already working at a very, very high level.
Mhm.
And so there's this way in which like the pay is better, the creative control is there. And then also this magical, like the democratizing of media. I never would have understood what YouTube was going to become. Like I would never have thought,
Oh my gosh.
if you give, everyone a camera, are they going to actually, and they're allowed to make any content they want without any editorial feedback, you would think that the content wouldn't be very good. But instead, it's amazing.
Mm.
And it's sort
I'm
of,
starting to feel like my job is in jeopardy because there's so many 20-somethings doing 4-hour-long critical analyses, books and films that are at a doctoral level, even though some of them haven't even gone to college.
yeah. I mean, it's really astounding. And so when I saw OnlyFans, I was like, oh, what happened to YouTube is about to happen to porn. porn is about to get so much weirder and so much better and so much cooler because women are going to have, women and men, honestly, are going to have the chance to just make it however they want it. And I think it was also I actually didn't find out about Two Turn Tony until actually I had written the first draft of this book. But I don't know, do you follow his account?
I don't.
So he has an OnlyFans account and also is a TikTok star kind of. And a lot of his shtick also involves his family. And so he's like constantly getting his grandmother high and his mom is like a figure always yelling at him. And so like they're obviously kind of staged skits, but they're very funny of like his mom walking in on his dad taking pictures of his butt for his page. And she's like, "Oh, Anthony, oh my God," and just like so like mad at him. And she's like, "You're gross. You're both disgusting." And they're like, "Well, it's just for," So, and he like raises ducks. He has like his duck is named Baby Girl. Anyway,
I can't believe this is an existing person.
This is an existing person who is making a killing on OnlyFans. And I just feel like the kinds of content that people make are cooler than what you could even imagine. And so I just I loved the idea of Margo kind of getting to be in on the ground floor of that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the funniness of the novel. It's a laugh in embarrassing public situations level of funny. And its humor really comes, I think, from the clarity with which you describe the absurdity of our ordinary existences. And in the particular ways in which you describe those without great privilege, economically or culturally, who are asked to turn themselves inside out every day just to survive, which is not funny, but its absurdity is certainly something that makes us laugh. And I think the section that you read was incredibly good at displaying what was working in the kind of comic range in the book. So could you think aloud a little bit about how you make humor work in the book and how this kind of absurdity of the quotidian works?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to understand that I was ultimately a comic novelist and that was sort of where I always imagined I would write like deep, meaningful, very beautiful things. I didn't.
Well, you have.
For sure. But I'm only able to do it while being a little clown. I don't know why, but that's just the way I'm constructed as a being. And so I've had to sort of accept it. But I remember once I started to understand that I could use the humor as a leavening agent to allow the work to talk about the darker parts of being alive without it becoming melodramatic or becoming sort of too much for the reader to bear. I also think there's just sort of a thing that either life strikes you as funny or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I always inappropriately get the giggles. There is something about the absurdity and the darkness of life that just gives me the giggles. Like I remember me and my mom getting so embarrassed because we were trying to make my grandmother's funeral arrangements, but all of the incredibly sanctimonious names that everything was called in the like mortuary place was giving us giggles. Like it was like the Garden of Whispers. I like the bench of happy remembrances. And like he just could not stop laughing. And so but I also think like, so once I decided I was like a comedic novelist and that was a road that I kind of wanted to pursue, I was obsessed with like, well, what makes something funny? Like, how can you be funny on purpose? Like, how do if I'm going to accept that I am funny and that I want to go in that direction, then I damn well like want to be good at it. So I have to understand how it works. And, funnily enough, not a lot of texts out there eagerly defining how to be funny.
Mm.
But as near as I could tell, the key to funniness is always surprise and recognition. And those are like that's like the 1-2 of it. And so the surprise usually comes from saying something you're not allowed to say. And then the recognition comes from like, it has to be correct and true. So I think what always surprises a laugh out of us is when someone says something and because laughter is a relieving of tension, right? You are expelling tension out of your body and it comes from some kind of rule being broken, usually the tension that is expelled by laughter. And so I guess that is sort of like my founding principle in understanding the way that I choose to be funny or pursue humor is that my job is really just to say the thing that you think you're not allowed to say. And that makes it actually really easy, especially for a character like Margo, who is looking at the world and is like, wait, what? How is it supposed to work? Like how
Yeah,
am I
and
supposed to live?
like when she's breastfeeding Bodhi and like staring at this dick to be able to like have a really good narrative about it.
Yeah. Oh,
This moment of recognition that like that that's not a fantasy situation. That is probably what so many women working in this field are doing. They're caretaking and also engaging in, fantasy making.
absolutely. I mean, and that's one thing that the only thing I knew when I started that I wanted to try and portray sex work in as little a sensationalized way as possible. So I didn't want any pearl clutching. I had to get rid of some of my own pearls in order to make that happen. There's nothing, you think you're like a totally enlightened, like liberal person, and then you go try and investigate an area that you just haven't thought about very much. And it's like, no, I've imbibed just as much of the gross cultural groundwater as anybody else. And so there was some like soul searching and deep thinking that I had to do there in order to sort of get the book where I wanted it. But I really wanted a portrayal of sex work as like work, like because the more and more like memoirs and books by sex workers that I read, the sort of like abiding motif to me was that it was a horrible job and also the best job they had and had access to. And that there were ways in which it was psychologically damaging, even when you were safe, and that it was way better than working at McDonald's, and just that those two things are true. And that is why people keep doing sex work, you know?
That's really nicely said. Margo's dad, the famous pro wrestler known as Jinx, has suddenly come back into her life after years of being on the very periphery. Decades of brutal punishment of his body in the ring have come with a powerful addiction, one that is both personally destructive and possibly a legal problem for Margo in her custody battle to retain Bodhi. When did wrestling work its way into the novel? And was it there from the beginning? And was it valuable to the world of your novel in a way to connect pain that one suffers from one's work and the idea of where one turns to deal with that pain?
God, such a well put question. I mean, okay, so the truth is, I just happened to get obsessed with professional wrestling at the same time as I was beginning my long walkabout through the fictional world, trying to understand what this book was about. And I think it was the beginning of the pandemic. My husband was putting it on because we'd just gotten a trampoline and like the kids were really issues. My kids were like 4 and 7, and my husband grew up watching wrestling and was very nostalgic about it. I was raised by my single mom and grandmother, so it's not like we were putting on WWE. Like all this was completely unfamiliar to me. We were like a strictly like musical theater household.
Yeah, you were not the demographic for
not the demographic.
WWE.
So, but in a way that made it, I mean, the only point of reference I had was like snap into a Slim Jim, that was like all I had. And so I was sort of seeing it completely with now fresh adult eyes. And immediately, because I already was such a big fan of drag, that I was like, oh, we're dressing in weird little outfits and being catty to each other. Sign me up. Hey, I understood the appeal of this immediately. I was like, oh, then we're going to like flip through the air.
Judith Butler could have done pro wrestling instead of drag, and it would have been a 1-to-1.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also there's something about the aesthetic of pro wrestling, like the way that it seems like a group project that's gotten out of control. You know what I mean? Where like one person's like, I'm boss, I'm like a demon. And then somebody else is like, I'm just like a jock. And then somebody else is like, I have a sock puppet and a mask, and like, it's crazy. Like it just too many cooks in the kitchen. Like there's like a homemade quality to it that I just like has a very like outsider art feeling to me that really appealed to me. And so And then I discovered, so like from just watching pro wrestling, then I started watching a show by Vice called Dark Side of the Ring that while I like folded laundry or whatever, that's just like very soap opera-y, interesting, like dark stories from wrestlers' lives. And that made me aware of how insane their lives were and how insane the business kind of was, because it has these very carny origins. And so things, even by the time it became as like official and national as WWF, it was still like from people who had grown up in this like much weirder carny-esque like regional tradition. And so like the social norms of wrestlers took a rather long time to adhere towards anything that anyone would consider acceptable in a working environment.
Mm.
So like just like they have like this like long tradition of pranking each other. And so just constantly drugging each other and putting itching powder in each other's underwear and stealing things, or like, like dropping a lit cigarette in Jake the Snake's snake bag so that when he removed the snake, it would bite him. And then he fed the bulldog from the British Bulldogs laxatives and locked it into their hotel room so that when they came back, their room would be filled with dog shit. Like this kind of thing was just constant. So I makes for really entertaining reading. And there's also this very rich literary tradition for wrestlers. So there's just like a million wrestling memoirs out there. Like pretty much every major wrestler has at least one, if not multiple memoirs. And they're really good. And they're filled with these like wild, very entertaining stories. And so I was reading them all because I just was obsessed. And I was walking the dogs with my mom and endlessly telling her different stories about like, I was like, I've so far heard 3 anecdotes about Haku taking out someone's eye. And she's like, if only you could put this in your book. Like, we could divert all these stories from having to come to me. Like, if there could be another outlet for you so that I did not have to hear. I'm joking. I mean, I think she genuinely was thinking, like, you're clearly so passionate about this. Like, you should write about this. And I, at first, thought, oh, but then I don't want the answer to be that Margo becomes a pro wrestler. And then, because that would be even worse for a young mother than being a sex worker. And then I was like, well, what if it was her dad? And I was really afraid of getting it wrong. I was afraid of it seeming corny or made up, but I just loved it so much. And so then when I had the idea, I've always been fascinated with the manager characters. Like, I don't know. Are you a wrestling fan? Like, how much wrestling do you know?
I am not. My experience with it is that incredible movie, The Wrestler, that came out in the late 2000s, which made me just, cry from the brutality of it.
Well, we should go to a wrestling show sometime together. It would be very fun.
I'm in.
Because there's a lot about it that I think is really like the only corollary that I can think of another show with as much call and response audience participation in it is Rocky Horror. Like the vibe of a wrestling show is just really difficult to capture adequately. But anyway, the point is, I am really fascinated with it, and I think that shows through in the writing, and I just love manager characters, and I've always loved, like, Paul Bearer, who is, like I hope that you Google Paul Bearer's face. If there's anything that you take from this interview, just Google Paul Bearer. His joke is a name is like a pun. He's a pall bearer for The Undertaker, and he
I just Googled him. He's amazing.
Yeah. And so I just like, I have a soft spot for these type of manager characters. Was just
dropped in an urn.
Yeah, that's in a haunted urn that gives The Undertaker, the wrestler he manages, his special powers.
Well, yeah, well, obviously.
Obviously. I wanted to be Paul Bearer for Halloween this past year so badly because I'm like I'm in a like little bit of a chubby era, and I recently dyed my hair dark, and I'm like, this is my time to be Paul Bearer. But my husband didn't want to be Taker, so we wound up being the Road Warriors instead this year. But anyway, it is so once I started thinking about Jinx as being one of these as a manager character, and I was thinking specifically kind of Paul Ellering and the Road Warriors when I was rating Jinx, not in terms of Jinx's biography. I don't think Paul Ellering did publicly have any struggles with substance abuse or anything like that. And I never meant it to be actually a portrait of Paul Ellering, but taking that idea of what a career path could look like if you were managing a very famous independent tag team and like how your career would play out kind of.
It's back to school season and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask kindergarten teacher Miss Gibson.
Give me just one Clorox wipe and I'm ready for glitter glue, exploded lunchbox yogurt, peanut butter handprints, runny noses, picking noses, rubbing noses.
Touching noses.
Thank you, Edward. Ooh, nap mats and lockers and tissue boxes. And
Clorox
scissors.
disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe. Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Well, I mean, now I'm in. I feel like I need much more
Wrestling in your life.
on wrestling. I've always thought of it as an amazing corollary to drag that just doesn't, perhaps get theorized in the same way. So even from that side of things, I think it's really fascinating. So class undergirds a lot of the pathos of this novel, and Margot's life has always been economically precarious, even before she's on her own. And she seems destined to live with the same money problems as her parents endured. Her economic position means that she is vulnerable to the moneyed of the novel, the family of Mark, and their attempts to manipulate and punish her. And she comes under the surveillance of child protective services, which is so much of a feature of being poor and vulnerable and a single mother. And she's under near constant threat of losing her child, her livelihood, and her home. Could you talk us through how class operates in the world of the novel?
Interesting. Man, you have so many good questions, and a lot of them that I have literally never been asked before.
I'm happy about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. And so basically, I think that I tend to think about class in a really I certainly don't think about it as much as any average British person has thought about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I was aware of when I was writing was money and the facts that like wanting money is often portrayed as like venal or a sin, or what you want is luxury, and that the poor are the salt of the earth. And, all of that messaging really fails to capture the way that money is power and the way that money gives you options. And I think I had a baby when I was 26 that was unplanned, and I was first of all, 26 is light years away from 19. And I was very lucky in that I was like madly in love with the man who got me pregnant. And so we just like got married and we're happy. But it was definitely a situation where we had no money, and where I was like, wait, what? Like daycare is very expensive and hard to even get into. And so I
if it
wound
exists
up,
at all.
if it exists at all. And so I think that definitely I started to understand, like, I am lucky. I have a master's degree, albeit in something useless, but like, yeah, I, like I teach college and I can't afford daycare. Like, how is anyone in this world doing this? Like, I'm so lucky, and I'm baffled as to how to proceed because the world is so not set up to take care of young mothers. So I think I was aware of wanting to portray all of that and like the structural ways in which we like talk a big game in America about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and it's the land of opportunity. But at the same time, like we've cannibalized the middle class. I mean, that version of the American dream is gone. And what people are doing is like trying desperately to keep their heads above water while they tread water. And
work many part-time jobs.
Exactly. And I think in Southern California, in part because of the real estate plays a large position in the Southern Californian imagination, I think. We're always aware of the cost of houses and the relative real estate values of different areas. We're thinking about houses burning down. We're thinking, it's just very, and I think that's part of why I wrote a real estate agent character. I'm like constantly sort of, it's a very like Joan Didion-esque Southern California theme to me. And so I think that, so I guess what I'm saying is all of those concerns were really native to me and native to the material. What I didn't realize until I was writing it was that part of what the novel was also going to be about was that some of what Margo was doing was going to make people think she was trashy. That there was this element of being judged trashy, and I realized that was another, like, part of how I decided to ultimately include the professional wrestling in the novel was because it was such a similar, like, you're making money off taking risks with your body, you're sexualizing yourself in public, but also it just has a bad reputation. Like, finding out that someone is a pro wrestler makes you think certain kinds of things about them. And one of the things that stunned me from reading the memoirs was that I don't even know where my stereotypes of pro wrestling came from, because as we've covered, it's not like I knew anything about it, but they were really wrong. My basic assumptions about what kinds of people became professional wrestlers and what their lives looked like and what their interests were and what their level of education was were all entirely wrong. And so I knew that I guess that I have an abiding suspicion that every way that we otherize someone by thinking that they're trashy is probably, like, mistaken and stupid. I think that that's just kind of a conviction that I have. And so what interested me, it was replacing Margo, like some stereotype that you might have of the kind of girl you think would have an OnlyFans, and then give you a real girl who has an OnlyFans. And Jinx, the kind of guy you think is going to be a wrestler, but then let's give you actually who would be a wrestler. And so I don't know that I had any portrait of class in my mind more developed or architectural than that. I just was interested in trying to replace anything that is in, like, an unconfirmed sort of knee-jerk stereotype reaction with something that felt human and real.
I love that. I think that's great. And I think that you have articulated, I think, at least part of a class structure for sure, and part of the way in which the culture uses that idea of trashiness to talk about certain kinds of work and behavior that, then I think establishes a label that is often, connected to where you are in the economic scale as well. Like, because you can certainly do things that would fall into that same category and be insulated from it if you are, very wealthy and very privileged.
For sure. Well, and also, like, there's a separation between money and class, like, that I have always felt, I think, very, I come from a very confusing class background. And I think maybe that's a typical American experience, is like not being certain where you fit in a class system anyway.
Yeah, no, whenever they do surveys of Americans, and
we all think we're middle class.
Everybody thinks they're middle class. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like 90-something% of people believe they're middle class. And I happen to agree with you that there just isn't a middle class in the way that we seemed to be having one take shape in 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
But whatever we are, it's not middle class. Rufi, before I let you go, I'd love to know what you've been reading and loving recently, and if you'd be willing to recommend some things for me and my listeners.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, just came out is Vantage Point by Sarah Sliger, and it is like, okay, so picture like a Kennedy-esque, like, cursed elite family, and then, like, part of the curse involving, like, recurrent scary internet, like, deepfakes. So it's like a really smart, interesting look at deepfakes, and she did a lot of really interesting research. I think I've been fascinated with deepfakes for a while, and I originally even wanted, because I was just really interested if, like, for instance, if you made a digital avatar for yourself that was an entirely AI created person who looked like a person, and then you just, like, mapped it to your body, and then you took nudes of yourself and then translated it into the AI body, would you still be producing pornography or not? Like, I think most people somehow would feel like if it wasn't them, the resulting image, that somehow it was more morally okay. And I was like, that's really weird. Why on earth would that be the case?
Yeah, yeah.
But then again, if you're selling nudes and it's not you, I also understand that people are like, well, my body, but then why does your body need to be so private anyway? It's very mysterious. It just lays bare all these parts where our thinking doesn't quite make sense. And so I've been interested in deep fakes for a while. So when I saw Sliger center it in this interesting way and I'm writing a thriller right now. So I'm kind of interested in these like darker, like faster paced, kind of like twisty books.
Oh,
So
great.
that's really fun.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I've been reading the Slough House books. Are you aware of those?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Horses
Like,
show?
Slow Horses is like
Yeah.
thing on TV.
Oh, totally. And so those I've just been eating up. I'm so fascinated with the point of view, and I struggle honestly with third person, and I just write better when I'm in first person. I think that both my parents were actors, and I do involuntary impersonations of people that are problematic. Like I just like if someone says a word in a certain way that interests me, I'll just say the word back to them the way that they said it. And it's like, I don't know I'm doing it and I'm not trying to make fun of the person. It's just like a instinct that I have. And my youngest son has it. And I'm like, you have to watch out. Like it makes people really angry.
He's in some trouble for sure.
In a lot of trouble doing this. But so I think that that's part of why first person is a natural mode for me. But I'm always like, I always want to write in third person because it seems like so fancy, so Russian, so like sophisticated.
Fancy.
And so I really am, I love what he's doing with POV.
Yeah, no, those are great books. They're really fun, and the show is, of course, incredible.
Apple TV, man, they make such good shows.
They make good shows. And I actually want to end, speaking of Apple TV, just asking you if you would talk just really quickly about the exciting process of Margo turning into a Apple TV series.
It's insane. I still can't believe that it all happened. It all happened, and it's anomalous. The way that it all happened is how it never happens. So much so that I would tell my friends what was happening, and they would be like, that's not what's happening. Someone is lying to you or something like that.
You're being scammed.
You're being scammed in some way. And I was like, no, I think that it's happening this way. And basically it wound up going to an 11-way auction for the film rights, and wound up then being optioned to A24 and David E. Kelly and Elle Fanning's production company. Kind of all came together to be like the winners. And I was like, every single person that has been added to this project, I like can't believe it. It's like it's charmed in some way. I know it's not me.
Elle, who is going
the
to
audiobook narrator,
right?
Yeah.
So the audiobook narrator who does an extraordinary job at that.
She's just amazing. And it's such a magical thing. I was such a fan of The Great. Did you see The Great?
Yes, such a good show.
Such a wonderful show. And there's this moment early on when they do such a great job of portraying the insanity of the Russian court. And she just is so miserable there. And they're such barbarians. And she's trying to escape. And she finally kind of believes that she can't escape. So she's going to kill herself. And her maid is like, well, yeah, I mean, sure, kill yourself. But like, if you're going to do that, like, why not just kill him? And she's not, and it's like all this agency that she had no idea she had because she was only thinking about like her options as like a good girl. And that was such a touchstone scene when I was thinking about Margo and what it was it mean for her to step outside of being able to use other people's approval as a moral guide. Once you're doing sex work, nobody's approving of you anymore.
Yeah.
And so you have to find your own
gold
moral
star
compass.
is
The gold star
out of the question.
So then and that is an incredibly empowering thing to go through, to come up with your own moral standard and your own ways of being certain that you are okay with your own behavior. That's like a very powerful transformation. And so when I first got to have that first meeting with Elle Fanning and like tell her that that moment had informed the writing of this book was so cool.
Oh, and so now, and you've also got, you want to tell us some of the other incredible people on board?
Yeah. So Michelle Pfeiffer is going to be playing Cheyenne.
Such good casting.
Such good casting. I think she's just going to also just bring so much depth to Cheyenne. I feel like Cheyenne could easily come off as too cartoony and slip into kind of like farce. And I just feel like Michelle's going to just bring this elegance and deftness to it that I'm really excited for. Nick Offerman is playing Jinx, which
So
I
amazing.
can't believe. I like they couldn't have picked someone more perfect. Like, and I would be the worst casting director in the world. I hadn't even thought of Nick Offerman. I was still going down the line of like hoping that maybe we could get a real wrestler. But it is so hard to do that, and it just ultimately wound up not working out. But Nick Offerman, he just has this like perfect blend of masculine and feminine traits where he is able to so believably, break someone's fingers, bounce a baby, and make a lasagna from scratch. Like you're just like Nick Offerman can do all three of those things, no question.
Yeah. Which is that's not a triumvirate that many actors.
Yeah, not every Hollywood actor can do that. Well, there's I think some of the other smaller casting I can't say yet because they haven't announced it yet, but there's even more. It's insanity. The cast is insanity. And
Yeah,
I think Nicole Kidman is in it. I can't say exactly who she's playing yet, but huge Nicole Kidman fan.
Yeah, well, I mean, that alone, I mean, it's going to be such a success, and the core story is so great and so funny and touching and just sits with you after you're finished reading it. And I just want to thank you, but also really encourage my listeners to run out to their local indie and get Margo's Got Money Troubles. It also happens to have a really fabulous cover, so you won't miss it. And it's going to make your life better over the next week or so that you read it. So Rufi Thorpe, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a treat to get to talk to you.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine on this one. Thank you so much. All your questions are so thoughtful and interesting. This is just like a fabulous conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all from me for now. My thanks to Rufi Thorpe for coming on to talk about her latest novel and soon to be Apple TV mega series, Margo's Got Money Troubles. You can find links to purchase Margo's Got Money Troubles and all of Rufi's recommended books at the website, burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.